All right, we're live. All right, thank you for tuning in. We're here today to turn people who are interested or confused into clarity, who for new or experienced investors who are ready to take action inside of multifamily, commercial real estate, but they really don't know where to start. This is exactly where you need to be. Today, I'm joined by someone who has helped countless of investors who go from curious to being confident for closing deals. Yeah. Uh,
Yeah, I mean,
ye-
commercial is exciting stuff. Thanks for having me, Michael. Happy to be here.
yeah, absolutely. She comes with real world experience, a deep understanding of like what the challenges are, what investors face, like, and she's extremely passionate when it comes to helping people. So thank you, Vanessa, for joining me. She's from Comloan. But let me ask you, being in this world of commercial real estate, what kind of drew you into commercial lending?
Yeah, I mean, I've been in this real estate debt business now for over 12 years. I have done residential, but after a while, I got kind of burnt out. I started working with more investors, and what I found is, when you're doing residential, like you don't have these competitive options for these investors, right? So with Comloan, I've been at Comloan for a little bit over a year. Prior to that, I was with a smaller brokerage, and we didn't have the proprietary system that we have at Comloan. Being a Comloan has just changed the way I've done my business. And the reason why I say that is, because of that proprietary system, where we have a central searchable pricing engine, right? We can literally filter it out from asset types, LTV, whether it's non-recourse, recourse, and I can get us quotes within a matter of minutes, sometimes seconds, right? As opposed to me, being at the smaller brokerage, I would spend maybe 2 weeks or more to try to get these quotes back from these banks, credit unions, right? So it's a huge game changer being over here at Comloan. Very
Listen,
efficient.
I know this. I know the struggle. You know, you go back and forth with the lender, and then things are changing, and they want to know all these things. I guess
Yeah.
that's really cool. I would love to. Let's dive deeper into that in 1 second because I think what's important is what what constitutes as like a commercial loan versus a regular retail loan or a residential loan. Like when do people
Yeah.
how do people identify like what's commercial and what's residential?
Yeah. So with residential, it's going to be your single family homes, condos, townhomes, typically 4 units and under. 1 to 4 units will be considered residential, right? Like once we get to 5 and above, now we're talking commercial. Now that's multifamily, but with commercial, we have industrial, such as your warehouses, right? Retail, offices. Those are going to be your big four food groups. But we also have special use, hotels, anything that's not residential is going to be considered commercial. So
Okay. Do you, when you go like look at a business, because you just mentioned hotels, right? And when it comes to qualifying, when you
mhm.
qualify, do you use like a pro forma of like, hey, this is what a hotel can bring in, or let's look at if it's an existing hotel, like let's look at the existing past records to help qualify it, or do you kind of start from scratch? Or it may not even matter about
Yeah,
the business part of stuff.
sure. So, with Comloan, we are lender neutral. We're brokers, right? Like we're not the actual lender. So we don't like to underwrite because of how many lenders we have in our database, over 780. One bank might look at it this way, another bank might look at it this way. But I can tell you that with commercial, we typically look at the last 3 years financials. That's pretty huge. If it is a brand new acquisition and they don't really have much historical financials, they'll look at performa. We have lenders that will look at performa, but they might want to see what type of prior experience, what type of prior business experience do you have. All of that kind of comes into play. Versus with residential, it's kind of black and white in my opinion, right? Like you have your standard guidelines, you have your pay stub, W-2s, Fannie Freddie guidelines. Whereas in commercial, it's not like that, right? We have a little bit more. It's a little bit more complex, more risk assessment. You know.
Okay, so really it depends on because you have all these lenders out there that can pick up the loan. Sometimes their requirements are going to be different, right? So
Exactly.
it's okay. So it's hard to really because some lenders are going to want this specific thing, and
Yep.
so how do you decide which? lenders, like, so say you get in a file, right? And how
Mhm.
do you assess which lenders would be bad? Like what this file, where should it go in
Right.
the lender? How do you decide that?
So let me kind of walk you through how Calm Loans process works, right? So once I have this file, and the borrower decides the sponsor wants to proceed, I'm going to go ahead and put together a very nice package. It's going to include a financing overview, a little brief summary of the deal, a little bit about their past, their experience. I'll also include a cash flow analysis, photos of the place, right? And then once it's all packaged, nice bow and everything is ready, I send it out to market. When I say send it out to market, I'm going to send it out to the lenders. And typically we'll send it to 12 to 20 lenders all at once, right? As long as I'm getting pricing for it and they're showing up in our pricing engine, we're going to go ahead and send it out to market all at once. And then they'll review the entire package and let me know whether they have an appetite for it or not. If they do, they would provide me with the quotes. And then once I have the quotes back, I'll present it to our sponsor, to our borrower, and they can decide what's going to work best, for their business, for them.
From the Great. So from the first step of the initial, like, whatever you want to call it, pre-qual, or you get like quotes, like you put it in your pricing engine and a bunch of things happen, right? You get a bunch of pricing.
Mhm.
From that pricing is attached to the lender. How often is it accurate, or how often does it change? Like what does that look like from
Yeah.
an initial, like what you see in your system versus
Mhm.
when the lender gets it?
It's typically pretty accurate, pretty spot on, as long as what you've told me, what you've told me about your NOI, the net operating income, if it's pretty close to what the actual numbers are, it's usually pretty spot on. So
Oh, that's good.
it's
That's
pretty
good to
nice.
hear.
It's not like bait and switch, like, oh, it says 6% here, and then we come back at 9%. Like it's not like that.
Yeah. Oh, no one likes the bait and switch. That has happened to me
No.
before, and it breaks my heart because I'm the one that has to go to the people sometimes and tell them. All right. So if using a service like ComLoan too, because that's part of this, right? So we, as I'm a broker as well, we work with you, and I basically can hand off the file to you, and you kind of develop the relationship with the borrower at that point, or how involved does the broker have to be when it comes to the relationship between getting the borrower and then getting them actually funded?
Yeah. I mean, I tell them they can be as involved as they want to be, but I would recommend that they kind of just, stay out of the, not out of the way, but, the more chefs you have in the kitchen, the more complicated it gets, right? So typically they
Isn't
hand
that
it off,
true?
they do it right, yep, they do it intro, and then we'll take it from there. And we'll update, the broker such as yourself once a week, on the loan process essentially. And then we'll take it to close, take it to closing.
Typically, how long does it take for a commercial deal to go from start to finish?
Great question. On average, it's not like residential where you can close within 2 to 3 weeks. It is a little bit more complex, more due diligence, that's involved. I would say closer to 8 to 10 weeks is your normal turn time. Now, we do have private money lenders, right? And also debt funds where we can close within, 2 weeks or less, but you're not going to get those sweet interest rates like 5, 6%, 7%, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it just depends, and that's why we do have that conversation with the borrower. Like, hey, out of the loan priorities, what's most important to you? Is it speed of execution? Is it the lowest rate? We'll talk about this, with the sponsor, and they'll kind of let us know so that when we pick these lenders, we know who to pick.
Awesome. To make a loan successful, right? Because you talk about, you package it. What what should the borrower prepare for to help you do your job well, as far as
Sure.
documents they need to gather, is you know talk about income, talk about qualifications. What makes a good package?
So a good package would consist of, your last three financials. It also depends on the asset type. We'll just use multifamily to keep it simple, right? You're gonna want your rent rolls. We're gonna want that. Your T12, your trailing 12 months. Like I mentioned, the financials. A bio of the sponsor would be great. Like, do you have experience? We're gonna want your PFS, your personal financial statement, your SREO, your schedules of real estate owned. So all of those things are really important, to package the deal. Few photos of the property because, like I said, in our package, I'll have like a financing overview where it's going to have photos, the cash flow analysis, so that when I send it to the lenders to market, they can really see what's going on, quickly, very quickly, to make a decision.
Yeah, and you mentioned experience. Like, what have you worked with first time kind of people in commercial, or you only Kamalone is kind of looking for more of the experienced person, or do you give the first timers when it comes into commercial? Maybe they've done um, residential, they've done some fix and flips, maybe they have duplexes, but what is the experience level that you guys look for when we're going into a commercial deal?
Mhm. I love how you bring that up because I've recently closed one where this guy has no first time investor, doesn't really own any investment properties, first multifamily, doesn't even own a, rental. So he got turned down by a bunch of lenders, not surprising. But like I said, we have over 780 lenders on our platform. We sent it out, seek appetite. One credit union came back. They do not require, you know, uh, first time experience, a first time investor experience, right? Like they're okay with that. And you would think, hey, maybe it's going to be a crazy rate, but we got him a 7%, and
Wow.
there's no prepayment penalty. Yeah, a lot of times you might have to buy out the prepayment. This one is, you don't got to pay anything extra, no prepay, 7%, and he closed. And luckily, he was able to close and keep his deposit because this was a fallout from another lender. So
Wow, so that's awesome. So you were able to find basically someone with no experience and get them a commercial deal. How big was the deal? Was
this one
it
wasn't too big. It was about 600,000, but as a first time investor, it's a nice sweet spot. It was about a 6 unit multifamily.
okay, 6 unit? Yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
was wondering. How many units was
yeah,
it? Okay,
six
great.
unit.
What is what is the biggest deal you guys can do or have done? What is the biggest deal you've done before?
Yeah, so Convo can lend up to 100 million, right? Me personally,
Wow.
my the biggest I've closed was a 44 unit. It was a 15.4 acquisition out in Idaho. So that one was
Wow.
fun. And I don't know about you, but usually those higher price points, those individuals are usually easier to work with, or the deals itself are usually easier versus like with residential. Like those smaller deals you would think would be very easy, but it's not. Those 30,000 townhomes or condos, they're usually really tough, you know?
I relate. I own another business. I do marketing on the side, and sometimes, the lower paying clients seem to be more. They just need more attention, and
Yes, there.
yeah,
That's a good way to say it, to put it.
that's a good.
Yeah.
I guess one thing I get a lot of joy working and helping people get their property. Seeing people get their stuff and all that. What is one of the best things about working in this industry that you enjoy the most?
I mean, definitely meeting and helping these small business owners, these entrepreneurs. I just had one recently. He owns a gym also out in Illinois, and he was paying a 13% interest rate. Imagine how much that cuts into your cash flow, right? We helped him
Mm.
refi, into I think it was high sixes is what we ended up getting him, if I'm not mistaken. But just being able to help them with their business, so that they can continue to grow, expand, it's a great feeling. At the same time, also just seeing what's out there, what people are doing, and a lot of interesting businesses. Right now, I'm working on a swingers hotel out in Kissimmee.
Oh, wow.
When I first saw it, I was like, okay, hotel, this is great. And then I looked more into it. I was like, oh, okay.
That
But
is probably the most interesting deal you've probably ever had or will have,
oh
for
yeah,
sure.
for now, yeah. But
Well,
I've already sent it out to market, and we actually do have a few lenders that have an appetite. A lot of them passed just due to the type of asset it is, which I understand. But hey, we have a few that don't mind.
so in that type of case, right? Like if you're building a hotel for this specific need, like do they have to did they have to disclose like how it was going to be used? They couldn't just said it was a hotel.
Well, this is an existing building. When we get that appraisal, I mean, the appraisal will people will know.
We'll tell you.
The lenders
Okay.
will, yeah, will determine. I mean, this hotel had like swings in the rooms and stuff, so it's yeah.
All right.
Better
So if
just to
you're
be
getting
transparent
into
up front.
yeah. I was gonna say if you're getting into commercial lending, it's good to be transparent and let them know what's going on because they will find out.
Yeah,
How funny!
pretty much.
Funny enough is I do have a house in Florida in Davenport, and
Okay.
Kissimmee is like 2 miles down the road. So
Oh, you
maybe
might have
one day
passed
I'll
it.
pass
You
it.
might even
Yeah,
notice.
I don't even know if I would recognize it. Who knows? How funny is that? All right. Well, I guess talking about those type of business as well, right? Because there are, and that's a hotel, but I know, um, marijuana is a new business that's coming out, and it's legal some places, it's not
Mhm,
legal other places. I used to work for a bank, and a lot of banks wouldn't even take them as checking accounts, right? They wouldn't even have a business account. Are there industries or facilities that you kind of stay away from, or that are kind of like off market? Don't you don't do those type of loans, or are you kind of more open, and depending if the numbers work, they work?
yeah, I mean, like I mentioned, we're lender neutral. We're just gonna put together the package, send it out to market, and we seek appetite. There might be, maybe they will. You just gotta see. And it doesn't
Yeah,
cost the borrower anything, right, for us to do this. So that's what's nice about it. And we're sending it to 12, 12 to 20 lenders all at once. There's nothing to lose.
got it. Now on the residential side, there's sometimes that we can go down to a FICO score, 500, 580, depending on that.
Mhm,
Is there a specific FICO score? Does that, I mean, I know you work with a lot of lenders, but like I know, like, okay, I have some lenders that'll take the 500s, and this is the lender I go to.
mhm,
It, you know, hoping that investors are responsible, right, with paying their
sure.
bills, but sometimes the FICO score can be damaged by DTI. They have a lot of debt. I'm working with a lady who, she owns a couple $1 million worth of real estate. So her score is a little bit lower, but it's only because of so much
Mhm.
stuff on her credit report. Is there an average of a FICO score that you try to stay around, or that's important? Like, hey, we can't do anything less than 630, 650, 700. I don't know.
I mean, for the people that have the lower credit scores, I think they know they will probably have to go private money, which we do have. We have private money, lenders. So bridge loan options, they don't really care. So we have those options. But if we're trying to get these more competitive option, more competitive quotes, I would say at least 600, 620. But we're lender neutral. I'm just going to send it out. I'll disclose it up front and our loan summary, what it is. And you never know. You just never know. I don't like to say yes or no.
Yeah. Oh no, for sure. I feel the same way because you never know. I tell my kids, you only get what you ask for. So if you don't
Hmm.
ask for it, you're not going to get it. So I appreciate that. Um, when it comes to, let's talk about down payments or like LTVs or certain things, what like is the most LTV that you've seen as far as down payment that people need, and what is the least that you've seen?
It really depends on the cap rate, right? The net operating income when it comes to how much you need to put down. But if you're going SBA, if it's going to be owner occupied SBA, you can go as high as 90% LTV. So just 10% down.
Oh, nice. Nice. So
Yeah.
you have lenders that can do SBA loans as well?
Yep. Absolutely. 7A or
Yeah.
504. Yeah. So.
Nice. Now you mentioned cap rate, and for people who don't understand what cap rate
Mhm.
means, can you explain what that means when it comes to multifamily?
Yeah. Absolutely. So that's essentially, yeah. That's essentially your gross income. You know what I'm saying? Over your purchase price. So your net operating income divided by your purchase price, essentially. And then that
Got it.
figure will give you your cap rate. Hmm.
Awesome. And what cap rate do you kind of want to stay in between?
It depends how much liquidity they have. If you don't have that much money to put down, let's just say cap rate is at 8. They're probably looking at 20 to 25% down. That's probably what they're looking at. Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, I had one recently out in LA and Los Angeles. The cap rate was 6, so he had to bring close to like 40% down. 40 to
Oh
50
wow.
almost. Yeah, but it just depends.
if there's one thing that you can tell people, like if there's something to avoid, is there anything out there that you say, hey, when you see, like, if it's red flags, we want to call it, but is there anything that you would, you know, give some information or educate someone on going into commercial investing? Here are some things to look for that are good, and here's some things to look for that may or not favorable. Is there anything that stands out to you?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a few where, they're getting into commercial, they're looking at multifamily, and the seller just, they weren't willing to provide historical financials. In my opinion, that's a red flag. I'm an investor myself. Like, I want to know, and what's going on before I buy this property. I would definitely say verify your numbers, ask for the seller's financials. If they can provide the Schedule E, you don't have to provide the entire tax returns, but at least a Schedule E. If you don't have that, at least give you some P&Ls, P&Ls, balance sheets, T12, in your normal stuff, your rent roll. I've had a few where, I get it, they're elderly, they're old school, they don't have any of this, they don't even have a rent roll. But as an investor, I don't know. I kind of want to know before I get into jumping into this, especially if I'm spending 500,000, 600,000 or more, right? So that's one thing I would say. But hey, to each his own.
Yeah, you definitely got to do your due diligence because you don't want to
Hmm.
walk into something um, that's losing. All right. Well,
Right.
I mean, this has been so informational. I appreciate you hopping on the call. I know we got a couple deals that we're working, and it was great to connect with you. Um, Thank you again. I appreciate it, and I look
Yeah,
forward to the future for sure.
absolutely. Thanks for having me. This was great.
All right. Thank
Alrighty.
you.